Welcome, I'm Debbie from So Easy, and today I want to talk through how you can find some extra time in your sewing room. I don't know if your time is anything like mine, but I love to sew and I just don't get as much time as I want to do it. So every minute I get in my sewing room is precious and I want to save as much time in there and be as efficient as I can. So I bought one of these. Doesn't look very exciting, but actually it saved me a whole load of time. This is an applique pressing sheet, and it's like a double-sided silicone or Teflon sheet, I guess. I don't really know what it's made from. And it prevents sticking. So I use it with my interfacing or my applique pieces, and it stops things sticking to the iron, which means I no longer have to clean my iron. It stops things sticking to my ironing board, which means that that's now cleaner and I'm not getting bits and pieces on my fabrics. So I just want to show you how I use it for bag making to save me a bit of time. So here's my fabric. So we can see it's got a fairly large scale print to it. And we'll say that these are my little pattern pieces. Now obviously I'm working in a small scale so that we can fit it nicely on the screen. So assume that these are full-size pieces and we're going to be making a tote bag pattern or something. So because I've got a larger scale print like this, rather than just put them all randomly or just butt them all up together, sometimes you actually need to center a motif within your pattern piece. So say I want that pattern piece just there. This one I want to center around that motif, so that one goes there. And then maybe this one needs to go here, and then some of the others are less important. Maybe that one goes here, and then some of the others are maybe lining pieces, so maybe this one here, that one there, and so on. And we're going to use all of these pieces, but we need to lay them out correctly on the fabric so that we can center our motifs on the pieces that we're using for our bag. So say for example I want to do that, so that's all of my pieces laid out exactly where I want them, and now my next step would be to cut those out. So for me, what I normally do with my pattern pieces, I'm going to draw around them as they are and then just cut the fabric out like that. So let's go into fast forward mode, and I'm going to draw around and then cut all of my pieces out for my bag. Okay, so those are all of my pattern pieces for the bag, the outer fabric cut out, and they've all been fussy cut so that I've got the little motifs on them that I wanted. Normally, obviously, if I'm doing it in full size, I'd be just whipping through these nice and quick with my rotary cutter, and it seems a lot quicker actually than using scissors. So if you can, get yourself one of these quilting rulers, something like this, and then you can cut nice square pieces and measure, draw right on your fabric right away. So that's one time-saving tip. Use one of these quilting rulers and a rotary cutter. That's much quicker for a start. So now that I've got these pieces cut out, what I would have done next is thought, right, they need interfacing on them. So I need to cut pieces of interfacing. And I normally would then go around and cut all of the pattern pieces, because with the interfacing, I know from experience that if I use this same piece to cut interfacing for here, inevitably I'm either going to have the interfacing poking out one end or one side, or for whatever reason it's not going to be perfectly cut, and therefore once the interfacing hangs over the side of the fabric, when I apply it, it's either going to stick to the ironing board or to the iron again. Therefore what I would normally do is go around and just trim a tiny bit off of all my pattern pieces. Obviously I'm just doing it roughly, don't do it like this. So I would trim a tiny little bit off of all of my pattern pieces on all the sides, and then I would use those pattern pieces again to cut out my interfacing. So for one, I'm cutting all the pattern pieces. There we go. Oh, it gets a bit tedious. I'm just taking, you know, 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch off of these edges because I don't want the interfacing to come right to the edge so that it's going to stick on everything. So I have to cut all the pieces, and then I bring over my interfacing and I use all of the pieces to do exactly the same as here. I'm now going to cut out all of these again in interfacing, and of course again it takes a lot of time. So this is my new solution, and it's so much quicker and easier. Rather than trimming down all of my pattern pieces and then using those to cut individual pieces of interfacing and then each individually fusing a piece of interfacing to the pattern piece, now I just add all of my pattern pieces directly onto a sheet of interfacing, and I can do the whole lot in one go. It actually saves so much time, but it also saves interfacing because I can just layer them all up, and if everything's square and rectangular, I can even just butt them right up next to each other. I don't need to leave any little gaps at all. And then add my applique pressing sheet over the top. The fusible is face up, so the sticky stuff is here, so it's not going to stick to my ironing board. And then when I put the sheet on top like this, I can fuse with my iron over the top of the sheet, and I know none of the sticky stuff is going to attach to my iron, therefore that saves me time too. Plus I get to just fuse the whole lot in one go. So it saves a lot of time, and then all I need to do is just trim these pieces out of the interfacing and it's all done. So that is a much quicker way. Now obviously that's with fussy cutting all of my pattern pieces. There's an even quicker way if you don't need to fussy cut, if you have a plain, a solid or a very small print. So if I'm using a solid fabric or one with a print like this, where we don't really need to fussy cut it to make it fit into any of our pattern pieces, all I'll do is lay the pattern out nice and closely like this on the piece of fabric, and then just roughly cut round it so I know that that's how much fabric I need for all of my pattern pieces. And I can put the pattern pieces to one side, and then the fabric can be fused directly to the interfacing. So I could stick it like this in one big piece, but again I'm going to use my applique sheet because I'm going to stick the fabric like that, again roughly cut round it with the interfacing so I know how much of everything that I need. And once I've got this, I use my sheet over the top and just fuse the whole lot. So then I have the fabric and the interfacing ready fused as one, and then I can simply turn that over, stack my pattern pieces on here, draw around them, and again I can butt them right up to each other so I can save fabric. That one, and then maybe the next one goes next to it like this, and then I can just cut everything out in one go, and the fabric and the interfacing are already fused, so I just cut once and everything is done. So that's how I can save a little bit of time for you in the sewing room. I recommend you get one of these applique pressing sheets. It really doesn't look very much, but I think if you use a lot of fusibles, interfacing, things like that, or appliques, then, or if you use a lot of bag making where you're fusing anything to your fabrics, this sheet doesn't look very much, but it's going to save you a lot of time in the sewing room. So I recommend you get one. Thank you very much for following along. Hope to see you over at So Easy again soon.